Yeah, I do.
All right, Guru Nation, as you can see, this is going to be a special one. I've got James Fowl. I've got Robert Goldman. I've been on his podcast before, Huxley Morton podcast with Adam Walker. Really good podcast, like two guys from different sides of the industry. James from the recruiting side, job recruiting, not patient recruiting. So you got to be careful when we say recruiting, because half the people are going to think you're talking about patient recruitment, maybe more than half. So this is job recruiting, right? And then Robert Goldman, he's from the sponsor side, like he just runs the show for right now one small biotech. That's pretty exciting stuff in the pipelines. You could connect with Robert to discuss what's going on with him. You can connect with James to discuss what's going on with them. And if you need a recruiter, I actually just got asked yesterday, can you put me in touch with some recruiters? I said, oh, I've got something for you. Okay. So, Robert and James, you guys had a conversation yesterday or last week, and you brought me in on it because you said, you know what, this would be a good podcast episode. So, what was it that inspired this recording right now?
You know what happened, Dan? So when I was going on vacation about 3 weeks ago, in the end of July, I was literally on the plane on the way to vacation, and my box was just flooded on LinkedIn with all these messages. And so I was just like, I'm bored. And I went and made that post that kind of got a huge response, right? At least for me, it was huge. You know, a lot of reactions, a lot of engagement. And James, I guess, saw my post. I had never conversed with James, and then he started commenting on it, and he reposted it and made an entire post kind of agreeing with my take on it. And him and I connected from that post. And
Wait
when
a
I was
minute.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so James just did what you just explained. It seems very simple, but there's a lot behind this, guys.
hmm
If you're a thirsty recruiter, I'm not saying James is, but if you're one of these thirsty recruiters in people's inboxes, that's not the way to go about it. Because Robert
Exactly.
gets those pitches all the time. But what he doesn't get as much, what's more scarce, is somebody who actually takes time out of their day to comment on something and then provide real value. What you just explained is like James's business model basically for attracting talent, which is what good recruiters should do. But go ahead. Sorry to interrupt, but that's like got
No,
me
I was going to
you're
say,
excited.
like, from my end, I mean, the post, I remember it almost like it was yesterday, because it was kind of like, these recruiters are getting out of hand, and I always almost flood to posts like that, because look, I am a recruiter, I'm running a recruitment business, but I just almost just to go to the comment section, get the popcorn out, and see what's going on. But I found that Robert was talking a lot of sense, and I had to laugh myself, because I've worked in agencies, I now run my own, and I know kind of all of the shit that goes on behind the scenes. And I kind of just said, look, I can see what's happening here. It's a bit of a broken system, really. But I just, from then I done my own post, got a bit of feedback on that, and just thought, yeah, I'd be happy to jump on with you guys. Dan, I know that your network is big on kind of entry level people trying to break into the industry. And look, I can't help everyone directly. I get tons of messages myself, but sometimes knowing how the system works allows you to spin things and at least twist, put it in your favor. And I when I was speaking to Robert recently, I said, look, I also get bombarded by recruiters offering me jobs.
Oh, you
And
get bombarded.
I run my own agency already and have done for 6 years. And I get,
What are they recruiting you for? CRA or what?
for kind of an entry level recruiter. Do you want to come and run this desk recruiting for whatever it is? And I said, one of the things that I say to Robert is, I always now reply, yes, I'm interested.
Why?
And because what I explained to Robert is that a lot of recruiters, when they're doing their search, they are playing a huge numbers game. So they will put in, let's say it's clinical research associate or clinical research coordinator. They'll put that into a Boolean search in LinkedIn, and it'll bring up reels and reels of people. And then they are able to almost sometimes extract all that information and just email everyone at once using something like MailChimp or something, or they're able to use LinkedIn automation, which is banned, but just send direct messages to all of those people like that.
So LinkedIn automation, not to interrupt you, is banned, yet
Correct.
they continue to do it. And James, can you please just tell the Guru Nation the story about hello, Mister, give me some more money, or that is just epic, and that adds a lot of fuel to what James is saying, Dan, about the fact that this automation that they consistently 100% use based on buzzwords are continuing to do, even though it's banned. That's what I think is so incredibly fascinating. I mean, they use this technology that should not be used. But go ahead, James.
Well, I think on that one, Robert, that wasn't actually LinkedIn automation software, but there's various CRMs and things that also software and do mail shots, etc. So on that occasion, it was where I worked previously. I was training the CEO's brother, and he said, "Look, James, I know that you've said that you don't want to run a team, you don't want to do this, you just want to get on and do your job." And I said, "Look, I don't mind giving your brother some support." And he was taking on a huge client base that he had never spoken to before. So about 2,000 different contacts, like project director level people, CEOs, etc. And he was going to do an introduction email with a couple of the CVs attached to it. And I showed him how it would all work. And you insert mail merge tags, so like first name, last name, whatever you want, effectively. And he started to do it, and I just said, "Look, I'll just go like this, dear Mr., whatever their name is." And I just put on the template that I sent to him, "Dear Mr., give me some money." Because if someone comes back and they like one of the CVs that you've sent to them and they hire them, you could be looking at making, 15, 20 grand in, billing, just like that. So it's really quick, really easy. And you can send that to 2,000 people or more at one click of the button. So he's done this, but he hasn't put the mail merge in to say first name, so Dan, Robert, James. So this email has gone out to 2,000 decision makers saying, "Dear Mr., give me some money."
Really? That literally is what he put in there.
And it was just insane.
Wow.
Because he came in on the Monday morning and all the responses have started to flood in, and like some of these were my clients, other people's clients in the business, and everyone was like, what's happened here?
It's a good way to get responses.
So that was a fun day. But you know what, it actually, in a way, again, just sometimes holding your hands up and saying, "You know what, I messed up there," goes down well, because I had a few CEOs who contacted me and said, "James, I'm guessing this guy's in your team. The email says this," and I was like, "Yeah, I've seen that one. However, what did you think of the CVs though?" And they were like, "Yeah, look, they're amazing. We actually want to interview this person. However, maybe you should check what you're doing with your automation and technology side of things." So look, technology can be incredible, but at the same time,
wow,
you need to make sure that you are covering your own arse with these things at times. Otherwise, it can be just...
I mean, who puts that? That's not a default name. Give me some money. So somebody, it tells you a lot about their mentality. They actually put that in there as a placeholder for themselves. So that gives you insight into their mentality, right?
How it works, and like recruiters still do this all of the time. They will send out mass mail shots to job seekers, to clients, just because it's easily done. And I guess it happens because it does bring results.
Yeah. I mean, even that, like, screw up almost worked for him. Like, hey, the CV's actually good. Like, we can ignore that. So you almost can't blame these. This is what our last podcast, me and Robert, the one that I guess inspired you to reach out to him.
Oh, that was brilliant, by the way, guys.
Thank you. I mean, I didn't do anything. I just let Robert kind of talk about why he gets upset at these things. But I get upset slightly less. Maybe it's because I had one stint back in college of being a job recruiter for mid-level fast casual dining. So like my job would be to get a manager from Jack in the Box to want to go to Burger King. And I never placed anyone, but I actually put like a good 3 months of effort into it. So I know how hard it is. And I remember one story, this lady did it. She went to, she switched, but I didn't do what I needed to do on my end. So she just went, like, I goofed. I let her know who's hiring, and she went directly without me to them. So like I was
Right.
like, dang, that was like, $8,000 for me back in college. It would have been great. But I was too transparent with her. I said, hey, they're hiring over there. You should go. Boom, she went without me, and that was that. So like I have a
It can
little
be
bit
a
of
fine.
empathy.
It's a fine line, isn't it? I guess, and that's why for anyone wondering why a lot of recruiters are like, "Oh, I can't tell you my client," is because that's the very reason. Because there's some unscrupulous job seekers that
Right.
will go behind your back and cut you out the loop. And I
I
guess,
don't even think she was unscrupulous. Like she was so excited, she just went. Like she was into it.
or unknowingly. But
Mhm.
again,
Mhm.
I think that's it. Just comes down to communication. And like normally, if I'm speaking to someone, I'm happy to tell people what clients I'm working with. I just say, look, this is how I make my money.
Yeah.
Like, don't go approaching them behind my back
Do you tell them? Do
because
you tell them? And do you think? And be honest here. I don't know the answer. Do you think they have a better chance if they work with you than if they knew the employer and go on their own?
it depends. Some people, and I speak to certain people, and I say, look, you know what, you don't necessarily need a recruiter. You could approach these people directly. Your communication's amazing. You don't need me to open that door. Other people, they would just send a resume and that would be the end of it and it would go nowhere. So it all depends on the level of recruiter that you're working with, the level of your own communication. There's a few factors to kind of answering that one.
Yeah.
I guess normally backing myself, we're not a massive firm, so we don't work with loads of different clients. So our client relationships are normally quite good. So I
Hmm.
can normally get feedback, even if it's informally. Look, hey, do you think that this person would be a good fit for yourselves? And if it's no, I will go back and say to the person, look, I've kind of casually spoken to them about your profile. There's no immediate requirements. And hey, I'm not going to lose anything. Feel free to reach out to them direct if you want. See if
Yeah.
you can do a
And
better
you know what
job.
it
Prove me
is?
wrong.
Yeah, but also, Dan, from a candidate perspective, right? Having somebody like James who tells it like it is, and let's just call it has the stones, the balls to have a backbone and champion for you. That's the difference between a recruiter you want in your corner and somebody who's like, you know what, I'm dealing with A, B, or C, and I just don't need that support. So for me, James was very transparent with me. These recruiters, and James, I'll let you give out the number because I don't want to speak on your behalf, but they get a
Mm.
percentage of the salary that they negotiate on your behalf. And it's pretty lucrative, Dan. I mean, I was
Hmm.
blown away by the numbers that James was telling me on the last conversation
I
that I had
can't
with him.
imagine like a CTM. If I was getting $8,000 back in '05 for
Right.
a middle manager at Jack in the Box, yeah, I can't imagine what
Yeah.
like CTM's gonna get.
Yeah.
Well,
Or
look,
even,
I'll let you guys kind of do the maths, but kind of a good recruiter will normally be working at billing rates of say 25 to 30% of someone's annual base salary,
Wow,
right?
wow.
Now, I guess look, it doesn't take a genius to work out kind of the figures that you're looking at, and then on that's the billing, what you would bill, and then someone who's doing well as a recruiter will be taking up to 30% of that as their take-home commission. So
And
that is
yeah,
why
this is
they're normally quite
super lucrative.
ruthless in a way because
Yeah.
there's a lot of money on the line.
And that's why I say you almost can't blame them because they're incentivized to not change their behavior. However, the cream rises to the top. And at least from what I've heard about James, and I see what he does on LinkedIn, he never spammed me once, but I know who he is. And same with Robert.
Same with me. Never once did I get a spam message from James. But on the other hand, not to toot James' horn, I have a respect for him now because of the way that he just comes across. He's like, listen, I can help you. I can't help you. If not, let me talk to people within my network. That's what I mean by networking.
Hmm.
James may not be able to help you, but a hell of a guy to have in your network.
And Robert, you're like perfect to be on this because not only are you like a potential candidate, I mean, companies would be lucky to have you there, but you're also in charge of hiring on your end.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
So, like from your perspective, you work with a small biotech. If you were to get two candidates, and they're never equal, but just hypothetical experiment, like one candidate come from a recruiter, the other one comes on their own. Does that come into consideration? Like, oh, well, this one, if I hire them, I have to pay James, but this one, I don't have to pay them. Like, even though the employee is basically getting the same salary, right? At least from what I understand, and maybe we can talk about that too. But like, what do you think, Robert, just about that?
For me, it's all about, I have a sense of knowing if it's coming from a recruiter like James, they're vetted, right? James has had the conversation. He knows if I'm working with a recruiting agency, they know what I'm looking for. They've reviewed the CV. They've had preliminary discussions. Maybe they've done a background check. Maybe they've done a credential check. And that to me is invaluable. Why? It saves a ton of time on my end, right? So working in the small biotech, startup biotech arena that I'm currently residing in, we don't have the resources. So I'm wearing a ton of hats, right? I'm doing the job of 10 different functional leads, right, internally, which is fine. I mean,
Oh,
that's
I know.
yeah, yeah,
Down to the vendor level.
yeah, exactly, firsthand. So with that, and working in the environment that I'm in, it's all about time. Time is money, time is saved. And having a recruiting agency like James, who's doing that pre-work for me, may play into my scenario. But in a larger organization, I can see why they may be indifferent. It may not matter to them. But specifically to me, Dan, that's for me, it would make a difference.
I'll chip in on that one because we're a small business. There's 10 of us as a recruiting agency. Now, when I'm hiring, which I am as well at the moment, I would prefer somebody who approached me directly, because then I wouldn't have to pay the agency fees. And I kind of know that individual is proactive, because a lot of people talk about, I'm a go-getter, I go and do this, but then just kind of sit back and don't do anything when it comes to job searching. Now, again, the answer always is it depends. So I would like that as a job, or as an employer, but I also can see that some of the best individuals in the market they're very rarely those that are actively on the market that need to go looking for a job. So they're not going to do that. And that's where having a good recruiter on hand adds value to them, because it saves them time. They don't have the aggravation, and a good recruiter will do all of that vetting, a bit of networking. They'll kind of almost like a lot of my people that I place have become mates or recently, I've known them for years, haven't had anything for them, but then I call them up and I'm like, oh, you said that you were looking for this, it's in this location, this type of company, tick 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 tick, what do you think? And then like it's always just about getting the agreement from the individual and just talking to people as people. I think that's the biggest thing that gets overlooked in recruitment, is like, you're dealing with people, just talk. Like, it's not how do I talk to a recruiter, how do I talk to a hiring manager, the same way you would talk to anyone else, probably, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. I actually had a question for you. So a lot of my students, we try to help them get hired. We've been pretty successful, actually. And then after they get about a year of experience, recruiters start reaching out to them, all that whole thing, right? There are some recruitment agencies, like they're not all the same. So I'd like a micro overview of like the different types, because I know there are some that will hire the employee themselves and arbitrage their salary to the sponsor. So they're making like $20 an hour as the VIG between what they're receiving and what the employee is receiving. So those employees are getting underpaid. I always warn my students, hey, if you have no other option, take it, but in a year, just get out, because it's not necessarily a good thing. Like you're leaving this much money on the table. Then there's other agencies that just do like, hey, just 10% of the yearly salary, 20%, whatever. From what I understand, that doesn't come out of the employee, the candidate's pocket. So like, and then what else am I missing? Because I'm not like very experienced.
Again, it's like, honestly, every question you probably ask me, the answer could start with it depends, because I guess if you look at it this way, any pharma company, biotech, CRO, they've got what is classed as a kind of employee recruitment budget for the year. Now, whether they hire someone on an FTE basis and just pay a finder's fee, you know, that kind of, I would say 25 to 30% of the person's annual salary. They pay that in one chunk, or they use the other model, which is where, say, myself as Huxley Morton would employ that individual and charge them out on an hourly basis and then just bill weekly or bi-weekly. And it's still kind of got that margin on top of it, but it's just drip fed. So normally that is used for either temporary staff or fixed term contracts. And it's very good for sometimes smaller organizations where they need that flexibility of, I can take people on, can let them go, you know, kind of move with the times without having that big one-off price tag, thinking, what if this person doesn't work out? So we, I guess, for us, we offer different services. And when I am hiring for people, I normally speak to them and just say, look, what is it you're looking for? What are you trying to achieve? Do you want to go with this service? Do you want to go with that service? And it's a case of what fits best. For the job seeker, it doesn't really make too much difference because that margin effectively is still going there and it's still coming out of that overall recruitment budget. And it's not that it gets taken away from the candidate. It normally gets passed on to the employer. So, you know, for most candidates, using a recruiter is technically kind of a free service. Again, I think you just have to be very upfront with what you're looking to make. So certainly on that contract basis, you know, if you're like, oh, I'm flexible and I'll you know, some recruiters will try to batter you down to increase their margin, knowing that they're already they could easily make 25, 30% already. If they can squeeze you down another 5%, they're making that extra themselves. But for me, again, I normally try and speak to people normally, and like it when candidates speak to me normally and just say, look, this is what I'm really targeting. Can we make that happen? And I'll be honest with them. You know, if it's no longer becoming financially beneficial for me, I will say to them, look, I've got someone else. I would rather put them forward, or I can put you forward at the rate that you want. However, when my margin goes on top, it will make you more expensive to my client than someone else. Up to you whether you want to do it. And I'll just just leave the decision with them. It's not for me to say.
That transparency is missing though, James. Like, you're a unique needle in the haystack of the recruit. I mean, Dan, have you ever heard of this type of a transparent? A recruiter has never said that to me. I mean, have they done that to you, James? I would also like for you. Can you talk about why recruiters operate the way they operate? Like you and I discussed. Like, why do they mass spam and spray? Why is that their technique versus, like, I think Dan would really like to hear that, and his audience would. Why is that the go-to?
It's the go-to because it's easy and it's profitable. Bottom line, look, money talks. And I think I gave you the analogy, right? And I'll do the same with Dan. Like, Dan, if you walk up to a roulette table, you can't pick a color. You've just got to put down the numbers, and you've got, I don't know, just one $10,000 chip, right? You are probably going to place it on your favorite number or something that meaningful for you. It's going to be very targeted, right?
Eddie Murphy said, "Put it all on black." I think it was Eddie Murphy.
He did, but you can't do that. Just
can't do that. I've covered that one.
Only the numbers, Dan. So
numbers.
This is a great analogy.
You would pick something targeted. If I then said, okay, look, you've got five chips, same sort of value. Again, there'll probably be some strategy to it. It'd be like, you know, your date of birth, whatever, again, where you live, something meaningful. You would pay attention to what you're doing. But then if I tapped you on the back and said, hey, Dan, you know what? I'm going to give you unlimited chips. You can fill up the board as you see fit. Don't worry about the losers. Whatever you're putting down, you're still going to win. You would load that board right up to the max, right? Mm-hmm. That's exactly what recruiters are doing. If you think of those chips as direct messages or, you know, in-mails, they're just throwing them out because they can't lose. They can, when you think about it, they can only win.
I would argue they can lose in the long term because they keep pissing people off like Robert at scale, right? They're just cutting their chances. Like Robert's just going to block them. And then the next time it won't be that many people getting their messages. And if like only 5% of people behave like Robert, where they go out of their way to block somebody, well, their pool, they're losing their chips as you play more games. So ultimately, you go bust unless you win big somehow.
But Dan, what I think James is trying to say is that if you have unlimited chips, and really LinkedIn has an unlimited number of resources out there, like what they don't care, like that recruiter that I blocked, they're not really losing, because there's another 10 people coming up in the industry.
Wow.
10 more people just got promoted from CRC to CRA, or CRAs are going to clinical team managers or trial managers.
It's quicker to lose fast than to research someone's profile. So that's why they do it. I think where you find the people that aren't having that waste or that spillage, as I class it in my agency, of messaging people that just don't fit, is when you've got good recruiters who have been there, they've done the job, they've done the networking, they've spoken to people, because they know instantly within 2 seconds of looking at a profile whether that message should be sent or not. It's the poor recruiters that don't know what they're doing, that just go send.
But why?
One thing, Dan, before, so like this is for your audience, right? So one thing that James completely opened my eyes to and challenged me to rethink is, how do you spin that that spam and spray into your benefit and favor? So one recommendation that James is like he said at the top of the show, always say you're interested. So seriously, for the past week, every message I get, and obviously the recruiters are not watching the video, and they need to be watching this video, I hit yes, I'm interested. And I go, James, why do I want to do that? He's like, not only are you spinning your favor, but 99.9% of the time when they get that response from you, they're going to go look at your profile and say, oh, wow, I should have never messaged this guy. I'm not even going to waste their time. They don't even come back to you. Just like in James' case, when James says, yes, I'm interested, when they were recruiting him for an entry-level recruiting position, those people don't have the balls to come in and say, you know what, here's an owner of an agency. And if they do, James is going to hire that person.
Really? That's what I said. For me, if someone has the balls to say, oh, you know what, I hold my hands up, wasn't looking, I spam this stuff out, but I thought I'd just speak to you just to follow up on my response and follow through and do what I said I was going to do, which is contact you. I'll be like, you know what, fair play. By the way, how's things going where you are at the moment?
Right.
Would you consider a change? Would you consider coming doing what you do, what you're doing, but working a bit of a smarter way to
and Dan, from a candidate perspective, if one of those recruiters who says to me, hey Robert, I have a CRA position for you, and they have the balls to pick up the phone and say something similar to what James says, I'm not going to hire that person, but I'm going to say, you know what, I like you, I'm going to work with you. You owned what you did, you explained, I get the tactic, but now you need to prove yourself and work for me and find me something that's actually going to get my attention and help me progress my career forward.
Wow.
So it works in both ways. So the point here for the audience is, use it to your advantage. So I don't get upset anymore, Dan. I don't, it doesn't bother me. Now I just hit yes, I'm interested. Literally, since James and I talked, every message, yes, I'm interested. Yes, I'm interested. Yes, I'm interested. But James, I do have to say, not a single response after I say the yes, I'm interested. So,
and again, it's that speed thing for you though, isn't it? Rather than saying, oh no, can you not see I'm at this level? I'm not a CRA, blah blah blah. It's almost quicker for you to just say yes, I'm interested, and gone.
And that helps the algorithm too, because if you ignore the in-mails, that's actually, I heard, not a good thing from a candidate perspective. Is that correct, James?
You know what, on that one, I'm not sure. I know it's not fantastic for the recruiter.
Sure.
If it's completely ignored, if you say interested or not, that just means that they get their in-mail credited back. And again, I'm always happy to do that, because I'm like, look, you're hustling away at this, not in the best way, but who am I to say I'm going to strip you of your in-mail by not
karma.
So,
right.
Yes, I'm interested. But again, I'm probably about 100 outreaches deep, and I've still not landed an entry-level recruitment job.
That is game-changing. That's somewhat game-changing. Like, I get approached by recruiters a lot too, and it's never for anything I want. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible for me to like stop doing what I'm doing. But like I get either like very high level offers or like very low level, like they still think I'm like a research assistant. I'll get. I don't get like anything in between anymore. But what I do now, I send all that info to all my students. There's like hundreds of my alumni. Some of them are on their third job already. So some of them actually do reach out to these recruiters. Others are just starting out. Usually what I get from my students, especially the new ones, is, hey, you sent me the CTM study director thing. I don't qualify for this. I'm like, no, you don't. But guess what? That recruiter has like a dozen jobs. So go talk to them. And I tell the students this all the time. So if you are somebody that gets one of these job leads or sees one of these job postings from a recruiter and you feel like the job description is out of your league, it probably is, but talk to the recruiter. Because the recruiter might be someone like James who says, you know what, like I don't have anything for you right now, but once you get a CRC role within 6 to 12 months, then come talk to me again. That's not that long from now, guys. 6 to 12 months is like that in this industry.
And I think that's you've nailed it there, Dan. Again, like from candidates, I love it when people just say, "Hey, James, look, you've contacted me about this or that. I'm not suitable because I don't fit for this reason." Again, because I want it to be a success, and this is one thing that sometimes people overlook. And for your audience, recruiters want you to be successful. So every time you speak to a recruiter, they want you to get whatever job it is that they're approaching you about, because you've just heard the potential financial reward. They're not trying to grill you. They're just trying to position things and find out how they can market you. So almost I always say, look, speak to me like I'm a 6-year-old and explain to me the key benefits or USPs that you have, because I'm going to be your verbal access to the client. And I don't mind that, because look, I'm not a clinical research professional. I have very little idea of how it all works, but I'm amazing at recruitment, and I'm like, this is what I need to know in order to transfer that and your energy to my client to then put you in the same room as that person. So it's just a case of just being transparency all the way through.
There's 3 things that we can talk about. I wanted to ask first, like the first thing I wanted to ask was, okay, if that bulk spamming is so easy to do and it does work, why don't you do it? Number one. Like, why doesn't James do that? Or do you, maybe?
We do, not to the level of just no look, see you later. we have kind of, again, thinking of betting, everyone's going to think I'm a gambling addict. It's a bit of spread betting. So you have your generic messages where you're canvassing for general interest, and that will go out on a bit more of a mass level, faster repetitions. And then when you've got a specific job, it then becomes really focused. If you're headhunting for a more senior level position, it gets more specific. So again, the answer is always it depends. But to really get into the rhythm of continuous talent attraction for me as an agency, there's got to be a lot of social resourcing, kind of, as you said, like being active on LinkedIn, being active on YouTube, all of these things, so we get the inbound leads. But then we have to go out to people as well, because out of every 100 people, how many do you think are actually actively looking? There's only a handful. And then there's only a handful more that are maybe considering it. Then there's a handful more that if you dangled the right carrot, they would then consider it. 70% fully happy in their job. So if you just think about the pure numbers, you've got to almost have some of your eggs in every single basket in order to have that success.
It makes sense. I have empathy for recruiters, back to when I had a stint as a recruiter. Like, even when there was like you're going to go from making $60K a year to making $80K a year, it was still a tough sell a lot of the times. Like, people are just afraid of change. So that's like, you guys have a lot of work cut out for you. And also, I want to flip this now to the candidates, because it's not all recruiter bashing. Like, like I said, I got empathy for you guys
If you
and
feel
gals.
if you've missed any questions on the bashing side, throw them over as you please.
We will. I know Robert's got some. I know Robert's got some more. But hold up. So I saw yesterday, okay, speaking of children, I saw your post on LinkedIn with your son, right? What's his name? Your son?
Axel, AXL.
Oh, that's an awesome name. All right. So Axel, you posted, I had 3 no-shows today on Zoom. So what do? I play with my son, So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to you. You'd rather be playing with your son anyways. What do you write off a candidate as soon as they no-show? Like, if they don't respond back and just ignore you, like, are they done? Like, are you done with them, or like, how does that work?
It always depends. I wouldn't say like blanket they're done. You can normally get a sense for what individuals are like by how they act and their scheduling habits and their communication habits. So if they're a no-show and there's just nothing from them, I'll normally send a quick message. Hey, I'm on Zoom. Meeting started. Life happens sometimes. Do let me know if something's cropped up. Happy to rearrange. And normally, whether it's immediately or a little bit after, people will say, "Oh, thanks so much for being understanding. This happened." But if there's
Is that
just
the
nothing,
majority of the time? Like
that normally look, we've all got lives, right?
Okay.
Even me as a recruiter, we all have things to do outside of work, and stuff happens. So, like, if someone can justify it, great. If it happens a couple of times, I'm like, look, there's always an issue with this individual. I kind of just think if they're like that with me, they're going to be like that with my clients. So I don't want to put my reputation on the line of backing someone who's maybe missed a couple of calls or said that we can speak at this time and then they don't show, because I'm like, I've got no faith in that person by that time.
Yeah. I know, and you have to rely on them. Like, back to when I did this, I had to rely on people. Like, I would pre-screen them, and then I would set them up with an interview with the real hiring manager, and I would tell them, "Hey, please be on time. You're a good candidate." But like, I had to rely on them to actually show up. I can't do it for them. So you're right about that. Like, you need to make sure that they're the right fit, or else that client, like, if they don't show up to that client, then they're asking you, like, what the heck, who are you sending
the
me,
recruiter
man?
looks like an idiot, and it's like we get enough stick as it is. I think some of the most frustrating ones, talking about letting candidates know what company you're dealing with, right? I will categorically say, look, I am dealing with this client, here's their name, I'm working on a retained basis. Have you been in contact with any of their staff over the last 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever period I've agreed is kind of fair game for me to introduce people from, because it's an incestuous market, right? And they will say, no, James, I've not been in touch with this company, never even heard of them. I put them forward for an interview, and whether it's the hiring manager, the talent acquisition, the CEO, come back to me and say, James, we interviewed this guy last week. He's a no-go from us. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, bearing in mind, like, you can probably see I'm pretty transparent, and I generally don't give too many Fs about, saying things how it is. I'm just like, man, are you, like, honestly, I've told you, I've been transparent. I've told you the salary. I've told you actually that we should maybe go for a bit more than what you're looking for. I've told you all this, but because they're looking to use me to get in where they want to work, but can't even tell me that they had interviewed there previously, I was just like, no, look, what is going on here? That's
so how do you not get jaded with just a few of those experiences and then just say, you know what, like, screw it, I'm just going to start mass emailing everybody?
Because I don't think mass emailing everybody would be the answer. Like, I treat people how I treat them because of how I am, not because of how they are. So it happens very rarely, and I just think, man, what is going on here? But
James, I have a question for you.
That's how the cycle starts. So I just think, look, I'm not getting involved with that. See you later.
Yeah, James, I have a question for you from a candidate perspective, right? So, why is salary such a guarded topic? Number one, and number two, why, I mean, I know you've already touched on it, but I literally was talking to somebody last week, just kind of reconnecting, and he's like, "Oh, my partner, they're very, very guarded with their clients." I
Mm.
understand, that the sidestep scenario, but why is salary such a secret? I mean, can you shed any light
It's,
on that?
I'm with you. It's not. It shouldn't be. Certainly not with a recruiter. If a candidate, if I'm working on a position, I need to tell the job seeker what that salary is so that me and him or her can work together in order to close a deal that is good for them and good for the client. The recruiter, I mean, as you can imagine, like even like the spread on the salary, even if it was, I don't know, like 50K, right? You know, then you put in the 25% for a billing rate, then you put in the 30% for, a recruiter's commission. By the time it comes down and then like the difference, what you get in your back pocket after taxes, it makes very little difference to the recruiter. So it's kind of like, look, I just want to know what we need to achieve in order to get a deal that you're happy with and the client is happy with. I don't really care what I get
Hmm.
out of it. All I care is that it's a mutual win.
So
And the
is it
salary
a sorry, go
side
ahead.
of things, I always tell people the salary.
But
Like,
is it a red flag for like Dan's audience, for people that are looking like, I think it is personally, but I'm asking you, is it a
mm,
red flag when you reach out and because for me, when I was looking, and if I ever start to look again, that's like a huge thing I want to be upfront with, because if we're so far apart, I have a family, I have bills, I have a life, I have progression, I have dreams, I have ambitions of where I want to go. And so, to avoid wasting time, you get on a phone, you see, you fill out a questionnaire, you have a 30-minute conversation, you have a follow
mhm.
up conversation, and then, oh, by the way, the salary is X. And you're like, oh my God, I was making that 5 years ago, you know? So, like, my question is that a red flag that people who are watching this video should be looking out for? What are those red flags that you say, you know what, this is probably a recruiter I should run from?
Okay, so two rules here. If it's a recruiting agency recruiter like myself, they should always be telling you what the salary is for a specific job. If they can't tell you at least a ballpark range, that job probably does not exist. They are just building their network
Mm,
Mm.
so that if they get a job, they know kind of what you're looking for,
They're BSing you, man.
right? So that's
gotcha. Yeah.
they've hooked you in with the promise of a job that does not exist. But at the same time, I always think job seekers should be upfront with a recruiter as to what, not what you're on. Don't even care what people are making, what you're looking to make. Because if I
Mm.
gave you a dart and said, I need you to hit the dartboard on a specific number, but I'm not going to tell you what it is, you could not hit it. So if I know that someone's looking for, I don't know, 100, 150, 200, I'm not going to contact them about jobs that are paying, less than that, because it's a waste of my time. It's a waste of their time. So with a recruiter, be upfront. And if they can't be upfront, it just means they're BSing you and they don't actually have a position.
Yeah.
And therefore I wouldn't necessarily trust them. And if that happens a couple of times, massive red flag. If you're going direct and dealing with a talent acquisition or recruiter in-house, they should always know the salary.
Yeah.
So don't play your cards as to what you're looking to make. Let them make the first move.
And do you recommend having that conversation in the front of the introduction? For me, it's always, hey, tell me what the base salary is for this role, and then if that number satisfies me, we can start move along this discussion. Or is that not the right play?
With a recruiter, get it out in the open as early as possible. It saves everyone time. Like if someone
Exactly.
comes to me and says, "Look, I'm looking for a senior PM job. It's got to be 200,000, or it needs to be sponsor side, oncology focus, or don't waste my time." I'm like, fantastic. Remote, I'm guessing, perfect. Don't have anything at the moment. I know what you're looking for. Keep in touch. If you see me advertising that you think is suitable, that you think I've overlooked you for, let me know. Normally, I'll then go back to them and say it's only paying X. That's why I've not contacted you. Whereas if it's with an internal recruiter, I would normally they should advertise the approx salary, but I would always be trying to create value first in the first interview before closing off that first interview with kind of getting a feel for what they are at least looking to pay as a ballpark. So you could just say, look, I will offer X, Y, and Z. What are typically, what are your current people making in this sort of position? Like, ask lots of questions around it rather than the direct, how much money does it pay directly to the hiring organization? Because then you can get labeled as they're just in it for the money. Recruiters don't care, because a lot of recruiters are themselves. But if you're going direct, I would be a little bit more kind of standoffish with it to create the value and almost test the water with lots of little questions until they make the first move of, okay, well, we're looking at this. And then again, don't say whether you're interested in it or not, hold back and then just try and create some more value so that you can go over the top.
Yeah, what I always say is I'm like, hey, take a look at my credentials, take a look at my, experience. What does a candidate like me, what would your client offer a candidate like me with my level of experience? Sometimes I twist it along that and then they come back with some type of a number or whatever. But okay, that's really good, really, really good advice. I think this has been super eye-opening. I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot of good advice.
Different scenarios.
Especially for the candidates. Like I have very limited experience looking for jobs myself. Between 2014 and 2019, I was a contract CRA, very part-time, but I was working with, basically at that time, like I was answering any recruiter that reached out to me. So I did talk to, I remember 3 of them at once. And 2 of them were I would consider good, like value add to me, and 1 was not. And the one that was not, I feel like they were playing an arbitrage game because their numbers were way off from what the other 2 were telling me for like similar jobs. But the good ones, the ones that added value, they would tell me, hey, you know what? This one, they're offering $85 an hour from door to door. They would explain to me what all that meant. And then they would say, this one's $95, but don't necessarily think it's better because from our experiences, this is what happened with our other candidates who work there. Like, it's more of a high stress environment. They would walk me through this stuff. And I felt like that was value add. Like, they actually know what they're talking about. Whereas the other guy was just doing some arbitrage thing. I was like, all right, no thanks. But the other 2, they were like basically coaching me for the jobs that they would find. So I think, like, when you talk about red flags, just look at how custom do they get for you. And like, the more experience you have, the more customized they should be able to get. Like, the more tailored they should be able to be for you.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on there. And again, it's like recruiters are there to present options. You feed in your information, and then they say you can do X, Y, and Z. Present the option, then you decide whether you want to go ahead with it. That's kind of how it works in my opinion, really. And I guess the better ones are just sharper. Like, they know immediately, they know the problems you're maybe facing and the solutions that they can offer. Like, for me, every single senior PM that I speak to just talks about burnout, hours, managing too many studies. So the conversation I have is the same pretty much every time, but I need to know where they want to work, how much travel, how much kind of money, how much PTO, what's important to them. So when the opportunities come in, I can say, okay, does that fit? No. Does that fit? No. And sometimes it's something I've been in contact with. I think last year I placed a guy that I had been in contact with for 8 years.
Wow.
Just going back and forth on text and stuff. And I finally had a position for him. He was like, he was like, is it good to get me off your books? I was like, yeah, something like that. Like,
for now.
But like, that's just how it goes. Because I'd sent him so many opportunities in the past. He was like, James, not for me. Kind of almost there. But when it came up, I turned it around for a client in like a week. They'd been looking for 4 months. I built that up.
I thought this was going to be a bashing recruiter thing, but it's turning into a love fest because I think because of you, James.
I'm sorry. Let's go back.
No. We've done enough bashing.
I want to continue the love fest. So while you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, you know how like the big CROs, they all have their own recruiters, right? Like you have PPD, IQVIA, and a bunch of drug companies too. They have like their own in-house recruiters.
Yeah.
On the surface, as a candidate, you're like, all right, that's cool. I kind of feel like maybe they're less salesy, less sleazy. But then you get someone like James who works with anybody, right? Any client. I'm sure you vet the clients for your candidates too, but
within reason. They've got to pass the, are you
like
an
you're not
idiot
going to
test.
recruit. You're not going
Yeah.
to recruit for Theranos, but you're working with like legit clients. All right. I actually think as a candidate, and I've never given this any thought until this interview, I would actually trust you over a dedicated recruiter for one company because you have the insight to tell me, hey, I don't have a dog in the fight. These are both companies I represent. I honestly think this one is better for you. Where you're not going to get that at a CRO. They're just
Exactly.
trained to tell you know what PPD is like the only way. The only way is through us.
Dan, I need to get you on commission. You're running my sales pitch here.
I just thought of it. I mean, this is exactly like
Oh, Dan, you're right on the money. I mean, I couldn't agree more.
Nailed it. And
yeah. So I think there's a value. I think capitalism is winning again because, all right, there's a place for the PPD. Like if you're a candidate, you really just want to work at PPD or IQVIA, you know where to go. But if you're not sure, a lot of these candidates, they don't know the names of these companies, like who they should be working for. But James might know, like, no, there's a company called BioSplice. You've never heard of them, but they're amazing. I think you should work there. That's a huge value add to me as a candidate.
And I think with the internal folks that I work with them a lot. Some of them are very transactional. Others are amazing. And you, again, with them, it should always be how passionately do they talk about the company. And for candidates looking in your audience, ask them what they think it's like working there, because they work there. They've chosen to work there. They've taken the job there. I ask them, look, what is it like working at PPD or Icon? What's it like since the changes have happened? Have you noticed much? Ask the questions to them. They're living it every day.
And they're still in your network, right? You're allowed to reach out to them after they're hired. Like, are as a recruiter, are you still allowed to communicate with them once they've been placed somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see that there's anything illegal with that. So yeah, I keep in touch with pretty much everyone I've placed. Sometimes I'm fishing for recommendations and referrals, which I think is fair enough. If you've done a good job, you're allowed to ask for it. Other times, but again, I'm normally honest about it. I'm like, look, hey, could you do me a recommendation? It really helps me out. Just lay your cards on the table. I don't think you ever need to lie about anything. If you just talk straight and just say it how it is, that's all you need to do. And that's kind of why I started my own agency, because I got frustrated with all of the BS that it seems that you gents have suffered with recruiters. Because look, you're right, it does happen. Recruiters blast out mass emails. They blast out messages that mean nothing. They do Boolean searches and run down to page 50 on LinkedIn searching for CRAs, and all of a sudden they're hitting ADs, CEOs, all sorts of stuff, and they're messaging them about CRA gigs. All of this stuff that you've mentioned happens, but it's normally junior recruiters that don't necessarily know what they're doing yet, and they're so highly pressured by their bosses, or that dangle of the big paycheck is just playing on them so much that they feel pressured to do it because it's the easy option. Again, if you think that roulette table, your job's on the line, you've only got a month to perform, your boss has told you if you don't bill something in the next month, you're out the door. You are throwing those chips.
Yeah. However, James, I did share with you confidentially that screenshot of that VP.
True.
Remember? So I mean, again, there's always that. I just want to, sorry to put that in there, but hey,
what happened? What happened? You got to tell us now.
Yeah, so a vice president of a recruiting agency reached out to me for a CRA role, and I sent her, a screenshot to James. Obviously, I redacted his name, but I left the title there because I said, James, what gives? He didn't really. He was just like, man, that's crazy. I'm really surprised on that one. So, I would say 99% is, like James said, the junior recruiters who are doing precisely what James said. You have a month to produce.
Yeah.
They have a quota. It's sales at the end of the day, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
So, but then there's always, then there's those, maybe he's a VP of a 2-person company. I don't know, but
sure.
Anyways, even those high level people are still sending out these blasters,
As a candidate, you can tell who. I mean, I think like resonates with like, and that's why we like James a lot. One last thing from me, James, and then maybe if Robert wants to bash more, or maybe give love fest, we can go either way. But yesterday, I had a job recruiter reach out to me, but not to get me hired. They're like, you know what? I'm fed up with recruiting. I'm trying to do patient recruitment. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Find a site local in your area. And they said, well, why do I have to do local? Don't I just find the sites on clinicaltrials.gov? And I said, look, you got a lot to learn. Like, yes, you can do that. But sites are so jaded by patient recruiters that they're not going to talk to you if you don't have a proven strategy. They'll trust you maybe more if you're local, but you can't just like do this at scale when you've never done this before. But do you think, I don't know how much you know about patient recruitment, maybe Robert's better to answer this one. Do you think a good job recruiter who maybe wants to change can do good at patient recruitment? Because I think the one thing maybe harder than job recruiting in this industry is patient recruitment. What do you guys think?
It probably is a better question for Robert. I don't understand patient recruitment enough to answer that.
Dan, that's a whole nother podcast. I mean, that's a whole nother hour conversation.
That is,
because honestly, I mean, for me, we've used, at my current company, we've engaged two very well-known patient recruitment services for some studies, and an utter complete disappointment. And the money that was spent, I'm talking in the millions, was just, I feel bad actually for even engaging these companies because it was such an utter waste of resources.
Yeah.
And so, I think I really personally, off the top, I'll just say it like this: it's apples and oranges. I don't think there's any consistencies between job recruiting and patient recruiting. I think it's night and day.
I agree. But this person thinks it's the same. This person thinks it's the same, so I'm trying to tell him, like, okay, like if that's what you feel like doing, do it. But you're gonna have to start. Like if you've mastered job recruitment, like you're gonna have to go back to the bottom of the hill and start climbing again for patient recruitment. Yeah, there's some transferable skills, sales, go getter, all that stuff, biz dev, organization, sales funnels, but it's different. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to ask you guys because this person asked me, and obviously they watch.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, thank you guys. Anything else? Let's bash Recruiter one more time, Robert. I know you got a good one left.
I want to keep it positive. I want to keep it positive.
What is your biggest frustration? For me, it is probably the immediate connection followed by, hey, can we just have a 15-minute chat to discuss some synergies? And I'm
I hate that shit.
About what?
And it's not from recruiters either. It's mostly not from recruiters.
Or just leave it. Like, I'd rather have like a cold hard sales pitch straight off the bat than just a half-hearted, can I chat to you because I want to know what the weather's like in San Diego today? No.
Yeah, I hate that shit. I texted Robert a screenshot I got yesterday, and these are to give recruiters these are usually not recruiters. Recruiters are usually more straightforward. Like, hey, are you looking? This is I have for you. These biz dev people from tech companies are the worst. Hey, can we pick your brain and go through our pitch deck? Or like yesterday, the one I sent to Robert is like a word salad of like $10 words, a whole sentence of $10 words. I don't understand what the hell they're writing. I read it 3 times.
It was literally a paragraph with commas, no periods. It was literally 50 words. I mean, I read
buzzwords, all buzzwords.
I read it myself because Dan's like, I don't even understand what this person's saying. I read it myself 5 times. I'm like, you know what? I can't even. This gave me a headache.
Yeah, why would I do a Zoom with you? You just gonna do like an hour of that.
Yeah, don't go using my tactic on that one. So just be clear. If it's a recruiter, say yes to everything. If it's not, do not say yes. Otherwise, they will be on Zoom with you.
They will be on Zoom. No, I'd rather do a podcast with you guys 100 times out of 100. But thank you so much, James, Robert. I will put links to both of your LinkedIn's underneath. You're both going to get reached out by a bunch of people. And let's all make connections and network in the good way, right? Just like James and Robert did. James,
absolutely.
They didn't know each other, and then they found each other on LinkedIn, and boom, now they know each other.
I got love for recruiters like James. Just know that. So if if you're above board and you're a straight shooter, and even if you're not, and you want to pick my brain, let's chat. I love chatting with people. I have a lot of junior level people that reach out to me, and I mentor them and jump on Zooms with them. So I'm happy to do that for anybody that I can help. In the industry, dance students, not dance students. Please reach out.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Everybody, like, subscribe, comment, share, go follow these two, go connect with them, and we'll catch y'all later. Bye bye.